In this video, we are going to learn about different kinds of atoms and how they are constructed from fundamental particles. Atoms are the small bits that make up all the matter in the world around us, from the air we breathe and food we eat to the houses we live in and the screen in front of you now. Although the objects around us can change, they melt, burn, break, etc., these tiny atoms do not change. They are like tiny Lego blocks. When you change a model, a Lego house might transform into a Lego car, but the actual blocks or atoms stay exactly the same. There are around 100 different sorts of atom, from the lightest, hydrogen, to the many times bigger uranium. Materials that are made of only atoms of one sort are called elements, and materials that are made of different kinds of atoms bonded together are called compounds. Each element has a different symbol, such as Na, O, and Ar. What element is represented by the symbol H? H represents hydrogen. Most of the elements have symbols that start with the same letter as their name. The exceptions are often symbolized by a name derived from another language, like Pb for lead. This is because in Latin, lead is known as plumbum. If you look on the periodic table, you will see that the second letter of the symbol is always lowercase. The periodic table was constructed by Dmitry Mendeleev, a Russian chemist and inventor. In 1869, he lined up all the elements in order of increasing atomic mass, and then broke them into rows, so that elements with similar properties were arranged in columns. By doing this, Mendeleev was able to identify gaps and predict the properties of elements that hadn't been discovered yet. Theoretically, the periodic table could go on forever, as atoms get more and more massive. But very heavy atoms are not stable and fall apart easily. Bismuth is considered the last stable atom. This is because atoms are made up of smaller particles. What are the names of these particles? Pause the video for a moment whilst you think. Atoms are made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Protons and neutrons sit in a small central nucleus, whilst electrons orbit around the outside. The mass of an electron is about 1/1000th of the mass of a neutron or proton, which means that almost all the mass of an atom is concentrated in the centre, at the nucleus. Because the mass of the proton and neutron are so much bigger than the mass of the electron, we say that the mass of the electron is essentially zero. We define elements based on how many protons they have. The number of protons cannot change. The number of protons must also be the same as the number of electrons in a neutral atom of the element. This is because protons and electrons are charged. Protons have a positive charge, +1, and electrons have a negative charge, -1. Because electrons are freely moving around the nucleus of an atom, they can be gained, lost, or shared with other atoms, providing the chemistry of the atom. Charged atoms are called ions. Neutrons are not charged. It really doesn't matter how many of these there are in the nucleus of an atom. It doesn't affect its chemistry, but they do help to bind the nucleus together, which would otherwise contain only the positively charged protons that repel each other. Some atoms have more or fewer neutrons in the nucleus than other atoms of the same element. These are known as isotopes. They have different masses, but undergo the same reactions and have the same physical properties as each other. In fact, their mass is the only way in which they are different. If there are too many neutrons in a nucleus, it might be so massive that it becomes unstable and liable to split up into smaller atoms. This is known as radioactivity. By now, you should be comfortable with the idea that atoms are made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons. You should remember that electrons weigh essentially nothing, and that protons and electrons are charged, but that neutrons are not.